Hey, everybody. Welcome to Badger Beer Hour for October of 2022. We've got a stellar lineup for you tonight. Not one, but two interviews. That's right. Chris has lined up Dan Abel from Pilot Project, and we'll definitely have Jake Schinker from Eagle Park and maybe Max Borgardt too. Then we'll have some news, and not just any news. We're breaking beer news tonight. That's right. You'll be hearing breaking news here first. And to top it all off, we'll have some beer events from around Wisconsin. Since we started late, without further ado, let's get right into the interviews.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Badger Beer Hour. And I'm super happy to. This is a huge show this week, guys. This month, we've got two of the biggest. Well, kind of the two sides of the biggest beer news in Wisconsin. Maybe this year, maybe not quite this year, but big stuff. So, without further ado, as Landon already said, let's welcome in Jake Schinker from Eagle Park Brewing and Distilling. Jake, thanks for joining us.
How's it going?
It's going great. So congrats on the big deal. So for those who have been under a beer rock in Wisconsin for the last month, Eagle Park has purchased the brands and the brands of Milwaukee Brewing, which went on was headed for auction and was for sale for a while before Eagle Park stepped in and purchased the brands, and then the other side of that, we'll be talking to Dan Abel from Pilot Project, which purchased the brewery. So, but first, Jake, congrats on the big deal. It's very exciting.
Thank you so much.
So why Eagle Park? Why Milwaukee Brewing?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that it was never like a aspiration of ours before it became available. Just kind of one of those moments where we had this amazing opportunity to. The one thing we haven't had as a brewery, being only just under 6 years old, was this kind of legacy of being a staple of craft beer in this city. And that just takes time. And Milwaukee Brewing Company, they just celebrated 25 years this year, making them the third oldest craft brewery in the city. And they have these awesome legacy brands, and took many years to kind of build up that fan following. And for us to be able to kind of carry on that torch and keep it made in the city of its namesake, and just carry that on for years to come, because we're pretty young guys, and it's not just going to be handled by someone who doesn't love it as much as we do.
Yeah. I got the sense that there was that kind of aspect of stewardship, kind of underpinning the way that you guys were talking about it. Can you talk a little bit about that, like that how you wanted to keep this alive and saw an opportunity to do so?
Yeah, I mean, back when we all first got into craft beer, Milwaukee Brewing Company beers were some of the first tastes of craft beer that we ever had. I mean, that brewery opened up when I was, I think, 6 years old. So it's kind of this weird now chance to take on something that has been so formative in our early years, of even before we were on the business side of it, just as fans of craft beer. Definitely a surreal thing to be a part of. But now just that also holds a lot of weight and responsibility, specifically with a brewery named Milwaukee Brewing Company, a city so storied in beer history. It's definitely a lot of pressure to like keep the quality there, keep the fans happy, and we're excited for the challenge.
Yeah, the way that I think about, I mean, you mentioned being, like 6 years old essentially here, and obviously there's been a lot of growth. And one of the things that I've been really curious about is how, a brewery that has, I think, made its name on very contemporary, very pushing the envelope with beer and products. I mean, like the ecto cooler, slush or sour, like neon green, things. But and of course the hazy IPAs, a lot of awesome, really contemporary beers. And that's not really what MKE has done particularly well in recent years, or obviously through its legacy. A hazy IPA was still 20 years away when they started. So kind of how did that, I mean, do you see it as kind of a complementary in that way, or talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that was most appealing for us in this, was that there was very little overlap of styles and what we're known for. If anything, in the past couple of years, we've been kind of trying to shoehorn in Eagle Park into these different product segments, like traditional lagers and that kind of thing. And it's been a really uphill battle for us, just because we've had this reputation of being known for more contemporary things. It's definitely started to gain some traction in that sense with our fan base, but now to have that ability to bring in these brands like Louis Demise, OG, Outboard, that kind of thing, these beers that have so much love and fandom, and basically they did all this work for us, and now we just have to carry it on, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the overlap, but I mean, I know in the last question I asked about like your kind of contemporary beers, but hello, what's that?
A little single malt.
Nice.
From Cedar Ridge in Iowa.
Okay, nice. Okay, so talking about, obviously there is not a lot of overlap, but I mean, Eagle Park does really well, really good kind of traditional styles of beer too. And I wonder, the more I thought about this, the more I wondered how, and you have talked about doing new seasonals and developing new MKE beers. So I guess I'm wondering is there going to be a tension zone between, say, like, are you going to have two Oktoberfests? Is there going to be an MKE Oktoberfest and an Eagle Park one, or a seasonal hef, or some kind of lagers? And there are some overlaps there. So how do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, so Oktoberfest is a great example, actually. So Eagle Park's Oktoberfest is more of a fest beer, so where it's a little more light and sessionable. And then Milwaukee Brewing Company has been more of a traditional Marzen. So even in that situation, there's still this ability to do both. But I guess from as far as like a new product standpoint for us in the future here, now rather than being able to or having to force what our talented staff can do as far as like diverse styles all going into Eagle Park, they can each have, like, we can decide where it's going to fit best, which is a really cool opportunity.
I mean, I think one of the things that you guys have done really well over the past couple of years, and I think particularly since your beer is really being pushed out a lot more from Muskego with the increase in production capacity, is kind of walking that line of having, almost like, I mean, it's definitely a cohesive brand, but like, the kind of regular beers, for lack of a better term, that like these Oktoberfests and seasonals and that we've been talking about, and then kind of the hazy IPAs and the cattle sours, stuff like that. Do you see some of those actually moving? Some of those Eagle Park beers actually moving into the MKE brand, or is that not really? I mean, things as they are now will continue, but it's just the new things that fill in the middle.
I think there's definitely things that we've released under Eagle Park in the past that we feel would perform better under the Milwaukee brand. But as far as like a grand plan to move a bunch of recipes that we're currently making under Eagle Park over, not really a thing. Okay. We are going to be bringing back the Brewers Day Off series from Milwaukee Brewing Company. So that was kind of their series where they let their brewers just kind of use any ingredients they want, go as crazy as they want, and just come out with these cool one-off beers, super limited. So we're looking kind of to bring that back, give us the ability to kind of show what we're capable of as a whole as a company, and show that there is this extreme amount of talent from our brewers. To just because we make ambers and cream ales and stuff like that doesn't mean we can't get a little crazy sometimes.
Sure. And I guess what, like, to your point about the Brewers Day Off stuff, talk a little bit about the depth of the portfolio of, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of beer, a lot of brands, recipes, IP, all that stuff that you guys took over, right?
Yeah, it's literal binders full of recipes. So I think that's been a really
has anybody counted them up?
Oh, I don't think we have a total count yet. Because a lot of that stuff was like one-off batches from the ale house, and there's a lot of gems that we have to sort through. But a really cool part was that 2 of our brewers actually come from Milwaukee Brewing Company. So on these old recipe and brew logs, it's their names from 10 years ago. Like a really cool, I mean, I don't know how they feel about it. I'm assuming they're decently happy, but they left a Milwaukee Brewing Company for it to only follow them now. So
nice.
But we have this really, even before the handover, we knew we were going to be really confident and we could come out with really high quality beer out of the gate, because these guys have done it for years. So that was like a big confidence booster in this process for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned the ale house, and that is a part of this deal for you guys, right? Actually, this is a question. I'm not sure.
The ale house was not included.
Okay.
So yeah, we were only taking the brand, but it did come with things like Midwinter Brew Fest and all these things that Milwaukee Brewing Company was known for. So we're looking forward to kind of being able to bring that back as well, as along with other things.
Mm-hmm. And I know part of the plan here is to have Milwaukee Brewing be bricks and mortar again in Milwaukee. So tell us about that.
Yeah, it's definitely a process that we're not going to rush. We understand that for what Milwaukee Brewing's brick and mortar facility should be, it's going to take some time. We're going to have to find the right spot, whether that's building from the ground up or an existing building. And eventually the plan is to have production on site, at least in, I don't want to say small batch because it's still going to be a decently large system, but that's going to be kind of where these Brewers Day Off beers are coming from, the smaller batch seasonals, but then main production will stay at our Muskego facility just because it's much better equipped to produce that much beer.
Awesome. I think that you know, when I spoke with Dan, you know, in reporting that story, I think there's so much kind of, I don't want to say reverence because that's not really the right term, but like respect for particularly I think that name, you know, Milwaukee Brewing, and it is a, you know, this is like Brew City, and you know, Milwaukee is so synonymous with beer, and so Milwaukee Brewing, like we can't screw that up. And it sounds like that's definitely part of your thinking, and I think, you know, like it's exciting to hear, you know, these plans about, you know, having there be a space again, and I'm sure Dan is super happy about that too. He was, well, I'll ask him about that, but I think you know, it's hard for me. I don't know, as a beer fan, like obviously you're involved in this, but I felt like this was pretty much like almost a perfect outcome. You know, like, you know, the brands themselves and the beer themselves and the brand land with a brewery that's accomplished in both aspects, and then this brewery has not just one. I mean, like the worst case scenario for that facility, I thought, was like a big contract brewer comes in that is not really interested in, you know, having its brands be part of the community because they're just coming here and then going out to wherever, you know. And not only do we have a brewer that is going to be part of the community, but it's like 10 breweries. Like, you know, there might be 10 breweries at a time coming up. So we'll talk about that, but you know, as far as your side of that, I I don't know. Maybe I already asked this question. Maybe I already asked this question, but I don't know. Anything to add on that? How do you see how the way this all shook out?
As far as, I mean, obviously for such a young brewery, this was a massive step for us. So we didn't take the decision lightly at all.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it, what kind of convinced us to do it was this respect for what Milwaukee Brewing did for us as a company. They kind of laid this groundwork. And now that it is a part of Eagle Park, it has also allowed us to do a lot of improvements to Eagle Park itself that were going to be years down the road, just because we weren't big enough to do things like hire a full-time lab quality guy or more staff in packaging and that kind of stuff, more salespeople. And to kind of get this, honestly, like a couple-year jump in this progress, just because by bringing Milwaukee Brewing Company in, we doubled our production the first day, which was and has been a headache, but a good one. So yeah, it's just kind of like this cool, everything just meshed so perfectly. And I think that's pretty rare in a situation like this, and we're very fortunate.
Yeah. And you mentioned the first day. Where is this all at in the process? I assume that it's been 3 weeks since the news broke, 4 weeks. So I assume beer is in the tanks, or maybe even out into the pipeline already.
I believe as of yesterday, every single main beer from them has been packaged.
Wow.
So
okay.
We've been going like crazy.
Awesome. So it has that, I mean, I guess you don't have a baseline for where it was at, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like like this is revitalizing the brand really. Like people are talking about it again in ways that I feel like it had not been talked about in a long time. And I mean, has the reception been even like better than you expected?
I think that's been the coolest part about the whole announcement of this was, yes, a brewery that doesn't get much talk in the Facebook groups or amongst friends that drink beer together. It's just been around so long. It's just kind of been considered this staple. It was always going to be there. And then when people kind of thought it was going away and it was just a dead brand, the amount of like the outpour of this love for all these brands really showed. And that got us super excited behind the scenes before we could talk about it. But then since that announcement, just the comment sections on these posts just filled with like, bring back this beer, bring back this. And we're so excited to be able to do that for people because we know that excitement from the other side as well back when we weren't making it.
Right. Speaking of those beers, like what do you have? Do you have some favorites that you're excited to roll off your own floor?
I don't know. There's a lot. Like I said, we're going through these binders full of recipes, just the amount of beers that you kind of forget existed, and then you see the name, you're like, oh yeah. So there's just a very large list of things we're excited to bring back, and that will be happening here pretty soon. On top of that Brewers Day Off series, we're also going to be bringing back kind of these legacy recipes that might have not been brewed in the past 5-8 years. And I know we were talking about a beer called Monkey Paw. It's like, it was like a beer that was brewed at the ale house only once or twice, but just kind of had this super awesome following for it. And it probably just wasn't an economical one to make at scale for these guys. So we have this awesome ability to do everything from like a 3-barrel batch up to 100 barrels. So we can kind of tweak that batch size, and it gives us no excuses not to make a beer, which is fun.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And like I don't want to let this go without like just kind of stepping back for what Eagle Park is right now. I mean, you mentioned like that three barrels to 100 barrels. Like, okay, so Hamilton is still you guys are still brewing there occasionally, right?
We don't have a brew house, but it's our sour facility now. So we're shipping down wort and aging in Eau Claire.
Yeah. And right. And you guys had your first wild beer release. Was that this summer?
Yeah. And we have another one coming out, I think, next week.
Okay. So there's that going on. There's the distillery. Tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, it keeps chugging along. Obviously, we've been pretty tied up with other things lately, so it's nice that it just kind of is working. Unfortunately, due to circumstances in the bourbon world, we haven't been able to fill any bourbon barrels in a bit of time here. There is no new oak to be spoken for.
Oh no!
So all these small producers, they were basically guaranteed the barrels that they were given last year and no increase. And last year we barely filled any. So that was basically a non-sustainable thing for us for bourbon. But now it's kind of opened up this door for us to look at American single malt production, something that our facility, with the improvements that we're going to be doing with the equipment, is going to be very capable of making at a high level. We're putting in a mash filter system, replacing our brew house. So that's kind of a pretty common thing in the single malt world. So and now to be able to go ahead.
And that brew house will serve the brewery and the distillery, right? Or
correct?
Yeah. How old is that brewery? The brewery is a year and a half old, right?
We're about 2.5 there.
2.5 years. Okay, that's right. That's wild. I mean,
yeah, we definitely thought it would last longer.
Awesome. All right. Any I mean, what's next? Like, I don't know. Like, nothing surprises me about Eagle Park anymore. You know, like that's the thing is, like, you guys are just doing so much, and it's all so interesting, and so much of it is really good too. I mean, that's one thing that I think is easy to get lost in this is that, you know, you guys are really good stewards of this brand. That, you know, have proven that you can make beer and sell it really well, and yeah. So I don't know. That's not really a question. Sorry.
No, as far as, I guess, new stuff, this has been consuming us for months now on end, just this whole process. And now we're still kind of getting our feet back under us. There were things that we're working on prior to this that kind of got backburnered, and now those are kind of coming back into the foreground for us, and we'll start working on those over the winter here. For example, we're looking at starting a coffee roaster. So that should be another fun adventure for us. But
that makes
one of many irons in the fire.
Awesome. All right, Jake, thanks so much for coming on and talking about this big news. I also apologize for saying that Dan was going to go first and then putting you on the spot. I just realized
the intro and ran back in.
Trying to sort through my crappy Wi-Fi issues here. So thanks so much, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, I'm glad I got my crappy internet sorted out a little bit there.
Yeah, me too. So what's going on here? You do the introduction to our next guest.
Yeah. So, well, we kind of already introduced him. Dan Abel is, president, I think, of Pilot Project Brewing, which is a brewery incubator in Chicago, and they bought Milwaukee Brewing's facility, kind of the brewery part of it. And then they have the lease, which is a very long-term lease, on the building itself. So, without further ado, for the fourth time.
How long, Chris?
Oh, am I choppy?
No, but how long is that lease?
I don't know. We're going to have to ask him. I think it's like, I thought I heard something like 38 years or something. I think it was a 40-year lease originally.
Ooh.
36 years, maybe?
Excellent.
He knows better than I do. Well, let's bring him in and ask him.
All right.
I'm like, put me in, coach.
Hey, Dan.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is
All
fun.
right. So before we get into the lease,
do you want to leave that as a cliffhanger? Is that what we're going to have as like the thing that we say at the very end, how long the lease is?
Yeah. Nah, well, I don't know. We'll find a spot to slide that in. Okay, so brewery incubator. I think people kind of get what that is maybe sometimes, but the model is actually kind of more like no, Greg, don't make me big, please. Oh, good Lord. The model is actually more like a record label. Can you just talk about, like, I think this is a really handy metaphor for understanding what you guys are doing and trying to do.
No, that's fair to say. I mean, even before, before COVID, when people were allowed to touch things that other people were touching, like we had a handout when you came to see our space in Chicago that just said WTF is a brewery incubator. And like the reality is it's something that's completely foreign to our industry meaning like fermented malt beverages or obviously beer, anything that's grain based. And it is modeled after the music industry. And what that really just means is that in the music industry, if you're a musician, you have a host of resources available to you as a creative to go out and like create your product, create your business. So I played music for a good chunk of time, and attempted professionally. And if I wanted to record my album, I would go to a recording studio, and that recording studio would record it, and then I'd syndicate it with a music label. I'd work with an agent to book my tour. I'd work with a manager to, complain about my anything, and then so on and so forth. And so you look at the F&B industry, the beer industry, and those resources don't really exist. I heard you mention a contract brewery to Jake earlier, and like that's really the only resource that exists for breweries, and that's once they've like proven themselves and are itching to grow at a national scale. There is no one who's formally out there trying to actually like cultivate talent and give it the opportunity that it needs. And so our little shtick that we always say is, nobody asks a musician to build a recording studio to record their album. So why are we asking brewers to go build their own recording studio or their own brewery in order to, create their product? And so that was the problem that we were trying to solve.
Yeah. And that, I mean, so I guess talking specifically about beer and breweries, what kind of things what are the services or the kind of help that you're doing with these kind of nascent brands that equates to that, tour management and recording studio and all that stuff?
Yeah. I mean, it's all tied to kind of what the barriers of entry are, right? And so the first and foremost, like the biggest barrier is that it's really expensive to build a brewery. I mean, for us, it was a few $1 million just to build our humble little spot in Chicago. And then so that is, first and foremost is how do you build a facility that's capable of producing at the scale as big or small as you need for, your fan base. So that was item number one, right? And then item number two is, okay, so I've produced my product, but now I've got to create a place for the public to enjoy it. A tasting room is also something that you can't take for granted. Not every brewery can launch a tasting room at the same time that they launch their production facility. And then there's the whole like, hey, what if it's a pandemic and people can't go to your tasting room to actually enjoy your product? So we got to find a way to get it out there. And so then we have the distribution aspect of our business that distributes all of our brands. To date, we've distributed to like 13, 14 different states in the United States. And obviously we're keen to distribute to more than that. And then there's all the other like over the top components, which is marketing, legal. I mean, this is a legally intensive industry. Alcohol is so heavily regulated. Insurance is insane. The amount of money that we spend on insurance is I never could have fathomed. And then all the other components that help, like, again, build these businesses. We're trying to fill all those gaps. But then I have, cheesy little analogies for every, like our head brewer is a sound engineer. And so we have all of that, too.
Nice. So this concept works. You've seen it work for, it's been 3 years, right? 2019.
It's been 3. Yeah. August 2019 is when we launched.
Okay. And but your, what is it, like 3,000 barrel brewery, was it?
Our space that we brew out of is like 3,600 is
Okay.
probably our max there, but we have been, brewing in other places.
Yeah, and so this is where Milwaukee comes in, obviously. So talk about how this purchase fit in. And okay, here's where we won't leave it cliffhanging too long. The lease on the brewery is how long?
It was a 40-year lease, and I think we're coming into it about 4 years in, so it's 36 years remaining.
Gotcha. Okay. So, what role does Milwaukee play? And I guess we should probably do some basics about how big this brewery is. It's a big daddy.
Yeah, it's a massive space. So, and I'll speak to that, I guess, in my response is any brand that we work with. So our facility in Chicago is small. It's not big. I think in all of Illinois, there are 280 plus breweries. We're probably like top 30, 40 in terms of size, maybe a little bit higher than that, but it's not a massive facility. And so then you pack in 5 different, upstart brands, we fill our capacity really quickly. And so as an upstart, as an incubator, it's really important to us that we are there to grow businesses, not stifle them. And so what happens we've launched 13 brands to date, and every single brand that we launch is our network as a startup ourselves grows with every single brand. And so we most recently launched this brand called Funky Town. Funky Town was the 13th brand. Actually, no, I'm sorry. They were the 12th brand. We have a new one that we just launched, but we launched this brand, Funky Town, and they were basically built on the shoulders of the 11 brands that came before them. And so their growth, it moves maybe a little bit faster than some of the other brands. And because of that, we hit this threshold of what our production capabilities are that much faster. And so the immediate problem that Milwaukee Brewing's facility solved for us is that, hey, we're hitting off the ceiling for all of these brands that much faster. We don't exist in this, musical world where we can just syndicate through the interwebs music. This is a tangible product. And so we need to build a bigger facility. Milwaukee Brewing facility. So between all of our breweries across the state of Illinois, we're producing about 10,000 barrels of beer a year of fermented malt beverages. The size of Milwaukee Brewing facility as it exists today is capable of about 75,000 barrels, but we're licensed to do 200,000. And so there's ample space in that facility to add additional tanks and expand and grow. And so in theory, any brand that we launch from this day forward, or any of the 13 brands that we've launched to date, have uncapped growth potential that allow them to, if they want to be a local Milwaukee brand, good on you. Like, go build your brew pub, launch through our incubator, grow to the extent that you're sustainable, and then take your operations elsewhere. But if you have national or international aspirations, there's no reason why our system, our facilities, shouldn't be able to support your aspirations, because it's kind of BS that we say somewhere along the line of being an artist, you have to go build your own recording studio.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen. And so that's what we're trying to call fallacy too.
We're going to make you a star, but we can only make
800
barrels for you a year.
Yeah, exactly. And like, we don't want to get in the way of the growth. We want to be able to catalyze it. And then our whole thought is, like, we're trying to totally screw up the 3-tier system. And so if our goal is disrupting that, then we need to be able to handle this absolute, like, frictionless go-to-market growth potential for any brand based off of what their aspirations are. And then more importantly, based off of what the public consumers care about. If a brand's awesome, no one should get in the way of that. And so that's where our system and the acquisition of the Milwaukee facility is so important.
Yeah. So last time we talked was right when everything was happening with MKE and Eagle Park, and there was a question that you couldn't answer then that I want to ask again now. I know this as part of the announcement was an announcement of we're buying this big brewery. It was also an announcement of a big investment from BevNet, is it?
Oh, InvestBev. Yes.
InvestBev, and of $8 million. And I remember that number very, very specifically because I asked about that. Are you at a point now where you can talk about or care to talk about the price that you paid for this brewery?
I'm not. I can't talk about what we paid them, but I can tell you is that the entire project is a lot more than that. Like the reality of undertaking that facility, complemented by the logistics of adding basically a second facility, staffing, all that is we had to. I mean, we had to put our money where our mouth was. I think that one really important piece in all of this is that this is not a nonprofit business. We are keen to make money as well, but we also had to build in the infrastructure to make sure that our system is not going to get in the way of the growth of the brands that we're working to support. And so, I mean, altogether it was higher than that figure. But I don't know. I wish I could give you like
I get you. I get it. I mean, the point is that, that number is tied to other things, and it's
a big number, but it's also a big number that's like focused on growth. It's focused on how do we make sure that dollars and cents don't get in the way of innovation. So how do you do that? Without like Pepsi budgets, we're still a startup. So like without that, we had to do enough to make sure that our own bottlenecks would not get in the way of the growth of the brands that we're working with.
You meant in that answer, which was very deft, by the way. Well done. You mentioned staffing, and holy shit, Todd Haug is part of your team now. Talk a little bit about that. That's a big get.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So I'm from the Twin Cities originally, and so I grew up worshiping Todd. I mean, I Surly, when they were in their Brooklyn Center spot and they were just getting up and started, were like my inaugural beer drinking days, and so he was the celebrity to me. At the age of 21, the same way that like Kirby Puckett, who's a former Twins, world champion, was back in my early days. And so he and I got together about a year and a half ago just to talk about collaboration, and we got along really well and just had we both play music. He was a little bit more metal.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. But we just sort of got along really well, and we share Minnesota sarcasm and all that stuff. And so fast forward to us really digging in on expanding. He was keen to get involved. Like, he's the guy that's done it all. So what do you do? What do you do for someone that has been a head brewer of one of the most prominent breweries in the country? What do you do for someone who's had their name literally slapped on a can and sold nationwide? He didn't care. Like, we have a head brewer. His name's Glenn Allen. He's the former brewery manager at Revolution and Lagunitas and Goose Island. And Todd didn't care about titles. He just cared about what he was going to do every day. And we said, hey, we're working with all these really cool creatives every single day. Every brand that's in our industry is throwing their new interesting things at us to try out and become the experts in. Do you want to run that program? Do you want to run, innovation, which is a super ambiguous phrase in every industry that it's in. But I think that's the space that Todd needed to exist in, is this sense of ambiguity and the ability to just sort of create every day unique. And what does that mean today? Today, that means we're completely breaking apart the brewing facility that we had and rebuilding it. It's kind of like buying a used car. separating it to understand like what could be different, how you can like, you know, really juice it up and like, and juicing it up. And like, that's what he's doing today. In fact, I almost promise you he's at the brewery right now with a drill or soldering iron, like doing something. And then what that'll equate to in 3 months time might be Hop Signer has a crazy new hop that they want us to test something with. And so he's going to start playing around with that, what that hop is. Or Omega releases a new yeast that they want us to tool around with. And I think because they know that we're working with this really open and this open-minded talent base, that if we invest in, if all the different people in our like world invest in us and Todd and Glenn on being the experts, that we can then kind of help those products or those things, those mindsets permeate through the industry.
Awesome. One of the other aspects here, Greg, did you have I feel like I am running this interview, but I know if you want to jump in, please do.
After your next question.
Okay. There's so many threads to this story, and I find so many of them interesting. One of them is, can you talk a little bit about, previously we talked about how kind of removing these barriers to entry in this industry kind of bring out ideas from creatives that have not had, basically haven't been platformed exactly well by the existing
system.
By the existing system. So can you talk about how that's manifested in pilot projects so far and how that kind of came about?
So if I'm answering your, so like, what's the,
I guess let me rephrase. I mean, just to be more direct. I mean, the brands that have been produced by pilot projects so far have been really diverse, and you attribute that to just the entire model itself being that the model like encourages that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's so let's use Napster, let's use YouTube, let's use any of these other like analogs in the music space. Is what happens when you lower the barrier to entry and you take away like these caveats that shouldn't be the qualifying metrics for what makes or breaks a business. And so by like removing the capital intensive investment that allows people to even just test the market as to whether or not people will buy their products, by removing that and saying, hey, we can just like anyone that's got a cool idea, bring it to us and we'll work with you on it. That I didn't have to go out there and say, hey, socioeconomic group, or hey, demographic, or hey, psychographic, we want to find you and help you out. That didn't need to happen. It's that by lowering the barriers that preclude creativity in an industry, much like what's happened in music, much like what's happened in a handful of other industries, you inevitably get diversity of thought, diversity of people, diversity of approach. And so I think that what's really fun is I came from a background that like invested in this heavily, and there are not enough industries that do this, but it was one of those ones where my co-founder and I were dabbling from a hobby perspective in beer and home brewing, and trying to figure out, what would it take to launch our own brewery. And the second that we realized how absolutely atrocious this barrier was, we just said, this is obvious. I can't believe it's not happened yet. And so, we very fortunately got to be the shepherds of that idea. But that's it. I mean, there's no genius to our plan other than recognizing that you break down walls, and what happens?
Well, the genius aspect of it for me is that you're helping underrepresented people gain industry. And I asked Chris this, since the second that this was announced, I've been super excited about this project. I normally don't get into the interviews. We usually let Chris do it because he's the expert and he is the the editor. He is what everybody loves about him as far as the beer baron goes. So I don't want to get in that. I don't want to get in the way of that, Dan. But today I took exception and I asked Chris that if I could jump on one of his interviews because
And I was no, this interview's my shit.
right. So there's a little bit of pushing back and forth, but no, but Dan, I just told Chris that I believe that your impact on a cultural level here is going to be profound. And I'm going to still stick with that because we have, with all due respect to one of my favorite brewers in this state, Venture Brewing, they are half or a third owned by black business. We might have another one that's sneaking around here. I think he's brewing at Mobcraft, I believe.
Oh,
but
nice.
There's been no. I haven't seen any beer out of that, or there's nothing been confirmed. That I haven't heard any more details. Maybe there are. They just haven't crossed my desk. And I have good sources like this guy up here, so I haven't heard anything on that. But my point is that like your project here, for lack of a better word, I'm just completely excited about it for that aspect. But that's not going to be my question. That was my statement. My question to you is, how does this all look from someone from the outside? Meaning, I guess there's an application process, and then they go through that, and then y'all pick, I guess, and then they go through it, and then what's the exit strategy, or what's the exit plan for brands like this? Like how do they quote grow out of pilot project? Because I've seen at the bottom here, actually, as you can see here, y'all. How do I show the screen? I've been doing this for a while. So past brewery partners, I would assume that these are the people that have been through the process, started and, finished. So whatever finish means. So yeah, how does all this work?
They're done. They're done. Their book is done. It's written. It's their chat. No, I'm just kidding. One, let me reflect on your statement because I think your statement's important, and I think like what's really important for me in all of that is just that like I'm where I like want to be extremely clear on is that our system is a system that works, and it's worked in many other industries before this. No one had ever introduced it to this one, and it's one of those things where it's like almost a calling card to like, hey, by the way, you build infrastructure and creativity and diversity and innovation happens. It comes if you remove barriers. All the things that we are wishing for in world proliferation gets to happen. Just cut the barrier down. And so that's where I don't ever want to like claim that genius, because that was not anything that we participated in creating. We just said, let's do this in this industry that needs it. Fast forward to your question then is, so our process so there's the addition process, and then there's the growth process that you were talking about, Greg, is our addition process is fairly rigorous. You apply online, much like you do for any job or college or whatever. And you apply online and you answer some questions. And then if we like what we see and it's original and it's unique and it's got some legs on it, you'll hear from me. You'll get an email. You and I will probably jump on the phone, just talk about what you're thinking about. I'm going to make sure you're not crazy, or maybe I'll make sure you are crazy, because that's also a good attribute in all this. And then if all of that checks out, then we're going to bring you in for an audition. And in that audition, it's very much like American Idol meets Shark Tank. Like, we want to try your product, but we also want to hear about your business aspirations. We want to understand what you're doing, what you're looking to do. And because a lot of that comes with, we want to make sure that you're legit. It's really easy for someone to come in, launch with us, and then lean on us, because we will fill all those different gaps, because we are a brewery. That's our business. And so it's very easy for us to do everything. but we don't want to do everything. We want to support you in everything that you're doing. And so that audition process is really important. We've launched 13 brands to date. And again, like this is where I talk about the organic aspect of all of this is 5 of them are women owned. Funky Town, the one I mentioned earlier, is only the second Black owned brewery in Chicago. You talk about, I mean, there's like 1% of the entire brewer population is of Black background, descent, ownership, all of that fun stuff. And so totally underrepresented. But then there's also an Indian inspired brewery that we've launched. The 5 female owned businesses exist across beer, but also hard kombucha. Flora Brewing that you're showing right now, she's based out of LA. Rome Hard Kombucha, totally different product. She's based out of Lake Tahoe. And so that's like what's come through the merit of our audition process. And then you get through this growth phase and going down to the part of like the past graduated brands is up until us acquiring the Milwaukee facility, we had to graduate you. Because if you got to a point where you're doing 1,000 barrels a year, our facility could only handle 3,600, and then we'd be subcontracting to other breweries in the city, and so we could really only do about 1,000 barrels per brand. And so at that point, you either needed to move into your own facility, like the likes of Brother Chimp there and Odious, or in Histrionic, or you had to go and contract brew in other places. And so that is what we're like the next evolution of pilot project is now saying, okay, well, you can leave when you're ready. We're going to launch you in our Chicago space, and we may open up other spots similar to Chicago around the country, just other like really, culturally rich areas, or areas where the cost to get in the industry is high. And then once you hit that 1,000 barrel threshold, let's grow you in the Milwaukee facility. And then the Milwaukee facility can handle, regional, if not. Chris, it's good that you're wearing pants, man. The Milwaukee facility can scale you regionally, or it can scale you nationally, what have you. And that's what the goal is there.
Wow. Okay. So you don't, real quick, Chris, I just want a quick follow up and I'll be done. You don't really need to be, I'm hearing you don't need to be in Chicago or Milwaukee, because how do you have people based in other places?
Yeah. So, I mean, the idea is that we have to physically brew for you, which is where like everyone's like, oh, you're a contract brewery, even though we're not. But we physically have to brew for you because legally the liability and all this stuff, it wouldn't ever make sense for anyone to not have it be that way. All that being said is, yeah, I mean, in theory, we geographically existed in Chicago to begin with because the laws in Illinois allowed us to do that. And so we still wanted to take, applicants from around the world. We had a guy from Belize fly in. We had a brand from London apply at one point in time. So in theory, we should be able to handle anyone from anywhere.
Okay, because I got Chris is out of here, but for instance, I am a connoisseur of black brewers. I love them. I go to Baron Flow, which is a black brewer, the only one in America at this point. Yeah, excuse me?
Did you see Funky Town this year's?
Yes, I did. Yes, clap, yay. So I'm wondering if, since that you already know that 1%, only 1% of black brewers in America are black, and we have over 10,000 now. I'm wondering if y'all are a fit for some of the ones that are existing but don't have their own brick and mortar, because there's 1%, but then if you go even further, only like 5% of them have brick and mortars. Right. So then they are either brewing, they're either contract brewing or brewing. I've heard brewing on other people's systems, or doing all different kinds of things. So would y'all be an outlet for that?
I think we'd be a perfect solution to that. The thing about us too, with the addition of this next space, is that no matter where you are along your growth, you can launch with us, sure, but you can also work with us. Now we have capabilities of going from 2 barrels to 240 barrel batches, right? Or productions. And so even if you're distributed halfway across your state, we should be able to work with you and allow you to create, cultivate, innovate within the confines of whatever your brand is. And so, we can, it doesn't matter where you are, where you're at, as long as we have a way to get our product to your fans, we can do it.
Wow. That's an excellent thing. And I don't know, I won't be in touch with you because I'm not a brewer, but I'm going to spread the word about, I'm going to continue. Either way, I'm spreading the word about the great work that y'all doing. And I just think it's great, again, about, I consider y'all, I heard you use the word disrupt more than once. So I believe that that's part of the thinking here. Of course, if someone says, I like to tell my boys, if someone says something, 3 or 4 times, that's part of what they're meaning, or that's part of where they're coming from, or that's part of the essence. So don't mistake that, and don't get that twisted, because if they say those words, that's what they mean. So I really feel that y'all are a disruptor in this area, and I just want to feed the disruption, if that even makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, I always speak in music analogies. So I'm like, what the Sex Pistols were for punk, what NWA was for hip hop, what all these brands were in all their different spaces. They're basically just saying challenge what exists. I think this is an industry that since Prohibition has been absolutely plagued with a total garbage hierarchy of the 3-tier system and a power dynamic that just doesn't make sense. And so that's trash. When you take power away from creatives, then you're totally screwing over an industry. Yep. And so let's give it back to creatives. Let's let the people do what they want to do, and then let's build systems around them, not to prevent them. And so I think that's what Pilot gets to do.
Before I turn it back over to Chris to make sure that he's doing good, I just want to say, any way that I can help y'all do what y'all do, please let me know. As a micro influencer, I don't have many people that follow me, but the people that do love me, I think. And
It's true.
we can cause some problems here, Dan. So I'm with you. I am not a fan of the 3-tier system. I've been looking for ways to bust that up to myself, but obviously it's a big system to run up against, as you already know. So we all need to be banding together and doing this ourselves. So I just wanted to thank you. I'm going to let Chris take over, or continue to take over, because he's great at this and that's what he does best. So I just wanted to thank you, Dan, though. And I'll go on mute here.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
That's awesome. So I missed a few minutes there. Sorry. I don't know. I'm just on my phone now on cell data. We'll see if this works. Okay. So one thing that you mentioned, I think this probably gets us pretty close to, nope, 2 things. Okay. One thing that you mentioned is, this is not the end of the pilot project expansion. And you kind of went over this pretty quickly, but the plan is to set up satellites similar to the Chicago location in kind of these creative hubs. Like you mentioned LA, maybe London, Miami, places that have this abundance of a creative class, that would essentially be that would be funneling to Milwaukee eventually if they want.
Yep.
That model, one of the phrases that you told me in our last conversation, Dan, that really helped that click for me, was when you referred to them as lead generators, which I thought was really a really kind of stripping away all from a business function standpoint. That's kind of what it is. Can you talk a little bit about what those other offices are going to be? I don't know if you've got a timeline for any of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and so like I'm a marketer by trade. So when I think about like how do you create a business? Because Pilot has to exist too, right? In order for all this to work, we have to keep doing what we're doing. Otherwise, if we fail, then this entire system fails. And so I'm a marketer, and so lead generator is like we talk about a marketing funnel, right? So you have to like start up here and then whittle down to the things that like succeed. And you know, in my like background, I was like, this is the conversion. And so when I think about what Pilot Chicago is it's small. It's like it's the lowest risk for anyone, including myself. But what it allows us is to work with as many people as possible at a given time and really sort through who's legit, who's going to do this, who's going to put in their full heart, who's going to do the work, who's going to find, you know, their niche. And what's fun about like what Milwaukee's facility does for us is it gives us like Milwaukee's beer city, right? And so like that is or brew city, excuse me, but that is like the perfect hub to scale and syndicate any brands. But by building incubators in, you know, the cities that you just mentioned, or just like really culturally rich, expensive, sure, areas, we're able to cultivate talent at this low risk barrier. So that's like what the lead generator is we've had just Chicago alone is that 450 people apply in the last 3 years. And so if we can then add in all of these other areas where people don't necessarily, like people may have not even applied because they thought that Chicago was supposed to be for Chicago, right? And so if we all of a sudden say, no, LA, you're online, Miami, you're online, Sao Paulo, you're online, then in theory, we're going to start to get these really cool ideas. We're going to get people who are more willing to take the risk, to take the plunge. And then that's like the lead generator. And so in theory, not that I want to sit there and be a barrier to entry. Like we recently just denied a brand and I felt terrible doing it. But I said, like, we don't exist in this industry to be a barrier to entry. We're here as a catalyst. And so if we deny you, that doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you're not going to do it necessarily with our resources. And so in all of these different areas, you know, if we have 1,000 ideas thrown at us in a given month or quarter or half year, or what have you, is we should be able to pull some brilliance out of all of that. And then of course, and those are all the lead generators, and then create this like this.
It's
this
like it's what's the monkeys typing? I mean, not that they're monkeys typing, but I mean just sample size increasing.
Oh yeah, I mean
increases your shots at your shot at success, and not just obviously it's your shot at success, but it's also, you know, their shot at success.
And allows us to be exposed. I mean, we're not going to always be the experts. We're going to learn from everybody. I think even going back to Todd and Glenn is that they're not going to pretend like they know what the Indian inspired brewery is. Zadi Brewing. We're dealing with products that are all brought in specifically for their beers from India, from Mumbai, like the streets of Mumbai. We are sourcing lemongrass tea. And so they're not going to sit there and pretend like they know everything about that. And so we get to learn from it too. And you know, we have one brand right now that is our own, but like we'll continue to do stuff like that too, because we want to be creative. We want to have outlets. We want to create our own boy band. But it doesn't change the fact that we don't want to have a music label that represents an entire populace of really cool people doing really cool things.
So, I mentioned this with Jake, but this is the reason why I'm really excited about Pilot Project being a part of Milwaukee, because like we as local Wisconsin people get to benefit from this, because all this production is happening in our backyard, And of course, some of that, because it's just easy to throw a keg on tap at the tap room. I mean, there's going to be, I imagine that there's going to be just a parade of really interesting beers and beverages. Like you've talked a lot about, stepping away from just beer, but whatever you guys make, being, funneled into and showcased here in Milwaukee. So can you talk a little bit about that part of the project and the taproom experience? What that's going to be like?
Yeah, I mean, we've created a monster wall for us to climb too, right? And all of this is like we've set the bar high, and we're the ones that are that need to climb it first. And so I think what's crazy about this facility is, excuse me, we acquired the Milwaukee space. We also acquired, if you've been there, the adjacent space next to it that was formerly called Bottle House, and it's all becoming a pilot project now.
A little bit of a misnomer, because it always felt to me like one space that was just weird, one thing on one side and weird.
Yeah, like you could order a vodka soda right here, but then you couldn't walk to the other side of a striped line. So no, it's all one now. But in all of one, there's 72 tap lines. There's 72 taps, and not every tap is going to be filled at all times, and not every tap is going to be unique. But I think like for us, it sets a very high bar. And what can you do? You're not going to have 72 fresh beers on at once, because that's impossible, and that's gross because they're not going to be fresh. But it's like we can really lean into barrel aging and not just barrel aging with bourbon, but like how else can you age products? How else can you get really weird and funky? You should be able to walk in and say, I want a lager. I want the cleanest lager. I want something as close to water as possible. And hopefully we're going to be able to fill in some, maybe not quite water, but like we'll get there, right? Then you should also be able to walk in and say, I want your craziest thing. And in saying your craziest thing, I hope it's not just a kettle sour that you're getting. I hope we're going to blow your mind. And so I think that's like the bar that we've set for ourselves. The public coming in, it's 15,000 square feet. It's massive.
Yeah.
That's
so big.
And
every time I think about brewery again, I'm like, God, that was big. Milwaukee Brewing place, man.
Wow. I mean, yeah. Am I stressed out about it? Totally. Are we going to do it perfect? No. But I think that we're going to come in and, again, with an open mind. And the thing that I've been really pumped about with our Chicago, constituents is that they come in with an open mind. They know that part of pilot project is the experience. It is like, hey, I might not love everything. I might not give everything a 4.5 on Untapped, but I'm going to come in and I'm going to be shocked. I'm going to be surprised by what people are open to doing. And I mean, you're still going to be able to get your hazy IPA, and it's going to be brewed by Glenn and Todd Haug. Like, come on, it's brewed by the best of the best. And then you're also going to get your quintessential Italian Pilsner, but we're going to do some crazy stuff too. And so there are 7 different spaces. There's a rooftop, there's a beer garden, there's this massive dining room. We're bringing in all this cool furniture. We're in the middle of having this artist do this incredible bespoke steam bent wood sculpture akin to what we have in Chicago. We're having really cool art put up on the walls. Like it's going to be really cool, but it is going to be unique. It's going to be different. I hope that it's not something that people are uncomfortable with. I hope that it's something that people will like appreciate, that we're taking risks and be willing to do the whole like choose your own adventure mindset when they come in, because it's going to be a little funny.
Where are we at with all of this right now? And also, thank you for the time. Like we're already at Badger Beer Hour plus, and
oh yeah, nice.
We haven't even gotten clear of the interview yet. So thanks for sharing so much. If you would want one more question, where are we at with all this? I know you guys were like feet hitting the ground running, talking about maybe brewing really quickly. Where are you at with brewing in Milwaukee? Where are you at with tap room?
Yep.
Like, you know, all the process.
Yeah, we knocked down our first wall on the day that we got the keys.
First
So
day.
we were moving quick.
Put the pen down and picked up the sledgehammer. All right.
Yeah, totally. And so, I mean, a lot of it's just topical, but the space is going to be an ongoing project. So we're going to try and open our doors really quickly. Right now, we are tentatively, so please check back, but we are tentatively targeting November 11th as our first day open. That is very tentative because everything with construction could change. And a lot has to happen in like 3 weeks. It's like watching those homemaker shows where they try to like flip a house in 30 days. It's like we're attempting that, but so we are refacing the space right now. And then the brew house, like I said, we completely decommissioned it. We've cleaned every square inch of it. We are also building in our own infrastructure. So it's not like we're just giving it a spit shine. We have very like specific systematic changes that we're implementing. And so our first test brew is supposed to go in, I believe, on Monday.
Ooh.
And then following that, we'll be, assuming all goes well, we'll be right into it. And so, you know, fast brews can be as short as 10 days, long brews 18 to 20 days, and then of course lagering is 2 months. So anyone that comes to us in the early days will be drinking some stuff that's brewed here locally, but then other stuff that we've brewed down in Chicago. But then we're also collaborating, like I'm drinking a third space right now, so we're going to do a collaboration with Third Space. We've been talking with Jake, Max, and Jack over at Equal Park about doing a collab with them, and so we'll have products in market, almost immediately. But if you come to see us in November, it's going to be a work in progress.
And what should we expect from? Well, first of all, you mentioned the house brand. What is the house brand?
Brewer's Kitchen.
Okay.
This is our house brand. This is like our little creative outlet.
Okay.
This brand.
So, will we start seeing that stuff on shelves here? When do you see that?
Yeah, it's funny. We've never really marketed the brand because it was never like a focus for us. But now we always sort of stifled it to support the other brands, and so it never really got tank time. But now we'll have tanks, and so we're going to start brewing that brand and syndicating that brand throughout, Milwaukee, Madison, Wisconsin, and at large, and then even for anyone in Illinois, like we're actually going to start selling it in Illinois now too.
And that's and I assume because of what you said in the answer to Greg's question that you are not working with distributors, you will be handling this all internally yourself.
We have a sales team. We have actually a fairly robust sales team. We brought on a former big wig at Lagunitas to run our sales program. And so he's hired literally, I think we've added 5 people to our sales team this week.
Wow.
So we are gearing up to start distributing to all of Wisconsin, not all of Wisconsin, but as much of Wisconsin as we can efficiently handle. And then we'll work with distributors. And then same thing goes for Illinois, and then distributors for all the states outside of that.
Okay. So, and I guess it's up to. I mean, these are independent companies that you're incubating. So it's kind of their call if they want to sell beer in Milwaukee or not, right?
Oh yeah. They can tell us to jump in a lake, and then we just have to do it.
Well, we have those too. So
there's a big lake that we can all jump in. So that's fine.
Awesome. I think that's it. I mean, it only took 40 minutes or 50 minutes or whatever. So, but the reason, I just think this is such an unusual and if just fascinating, I don't know. It's just such a cool story. I mean, I think that like I said before, I think the effect for Wisconsin and Milwaukee in particular is just is just off the charts. So I'm really excited.
I am too. It's fun. It's I'm really happy to be back in Wisconsin. I'm just excited to be back with. I grew up in Minnesota. I went to school in Wisconsin, and then I've been in LA, New York, San Francisco, all that stuff since then. And so it's like nice to be back with my people, if that makes any sense. I mean, we are a different breed in the Midwest, and so this is going to be pretty cool. I hope it's going to be pretty cool. We could totally screw this up. So I hope we don't, but
yeah, possible.
As a beer drinker,
my own life. So yeah, anything's possible.
And as just a regular beer drinker who happens to have a platform, to me, this is the best case scenario for Milwaukee Brewing Company. It was disappointing that they had that nice big facility. We were, I don't know about Jaws, but I was really excited when it was first announced. I had a tour there. I was just like, man, this is going to be fun. It's going to be big. It's going to be great. So then when they failed, it's almost the same emotion on the outro, if that makes sense. And having that unknown of what's going to happen with this big building, and it's probably not going to be a brewery. It's probably not going to be a brewery that is as big as Milwaukee Brewing was, and impact that it had on Milwaukee's brewing scene for the longest time. This is the best case scenario because you got young, new ideas. It's a disrupting idea. You're going to have different brands moving in and out. It's going to be like this. I like people watching, Dan. It's going to be like people watching, sitting on a bench at the mall, just watching people go by and just being fascinated by what they're doing and who's doing what. And that's what I feel about Poly Project. So I wish you the best. I just had to come on and say that blurb. I'm out of here. Bye.
Eddie Porter. Thanks, Greg.
Yes.
I think that captures it. Dan, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for all the time. I know we talked about like 20 minutes or something, and so I really appreciate sticking with it. And you're a very good communicator of your story, so that works in your favor. So
yeah, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Idiot Dross.
I felt like I had to. I couldn't just.
All right.
Take care. Hey, Landon.
Hey, Chris.
We're not in the news intro.
Yeah. Well, you made us wait till after the interviews for this breaking news. I hope there's still people waiting for it. What you got?
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So let me. Wow. I'm used to the intro to kind of like reset my brain. Yeah, this is kind of a big deal. Okay, so here's the cool thing. This news is breaking tomorrow.
But it's breaking tonight.
It's breaking here. But this will be out in the world tomorrow. And the story is that Wisconsin Brewing Company's beers, Yankee USA IPA, Badger Club, Amber, all the beers that made by Wisconsin Brewing in Verona are not going away, but the brand is going away. WBC is folding its house brand into Lake Louie. So those beers will still exist, and it sounds like they will continue to make all the, I don't think they're really changing their brewing program there, but all those beers are now going to be Lake Louie beers. And we did get permission to, not that they have to give permission, but we're not like talking out of school here. The company president Paul Verdew sent this press release out early. I guess it was yesterday, and he said this is embargoed for Thursday morning. And I'm like, hey Paul, we're gonna do this live stream Wednesday night. Is that what do you think? He's like, oh yeah, good. It's good. So here we are. And actually, another guy who got that press release and wrote a story about it is Barry Adams, my esteemed colleague at the Wisconsin State Journal. And he actually sent me his story. So I'm going to give you a little scoop of his story. Again, this one I did get permission. He signed off on this. So the why here is pretty interesting. So, I think we all kind of recognize that WBC's core brands we were talking about this a little bit beforehand. Solid beer, solid to good beer, not super exciting, but and then versus like Lake Louis, like Warp Speed, everybody loves that, So I think this makes sense in that I think intuitively to a Wisconsin beer drinker, this move makes sense, but there's a little bit behind the scenes here that's in Barry's story. Paul Verdu, the company president, noted that this will be eliminating multiple distributors that they had within each region. And I did not realize this, but Lake Louis, like in Madison, Lake Louis was with Frank Beer, and Wisconsin Brewing was with the Wisconsin distributors. So that is a problem when you're working with two companies with two different brands. So
right.
I don't think these aren't Wisconsin Brewing Company beers anymore, gets them off the hook for that. But this is just, Verdu came in May as president. And I think he recognized this right away as one of the problems that this company needed to overcome. So they've been working on consolidating distributorships, which those deals are painful to get out of. So I think this is some serious effort and probably resources exerted to make that happen. And the other thing is this allows the marketing team for WBC. And by the way, Wisconsin Brewing Company will continue to be the parent company for Lake Louis and all their contract business, which we'll get into in a bit.
Sure.
But this will allow WBC's marketing team to focus on that single portfolio rather than kind of like having a different messages for different brands. And they were kind of aligned to begin with, I think, but they're kind of leaning into this outdoor Wisconsin vibe right now. Greg, do you have the that logo that I sent you? Can you show that up? So this is their new logo, and the fishing lure was part of Lake Louis' brand previously, but they get kind of the updated logo type, and then they kind of tweak that minnow crankbait into a mug or a glass with beer and everything. So kind of a cool new brand thing that'll be rolling out for both, Badger Club and Warp Speed and all the other beers. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with labels and stuff too.
Yeah.
All getting a new look. Here's a quote from Paul Verdu in Barry's story, which will be hitting the State Journal tomorrow morning. So you should check that out for the whole thing. It was a hard decision, but we needed to move to one brand, said Verdu, who consulted with WBC founders Carl Nolan and Kirby Nelson and Lake Louis founder Tom Porter in the decision. It was a unanimous quote. It was a unanimous, fully supported, egos aside decision to move into Lake Louis. It's been around longer. It has a more interesting backstory, and there's just a lot more things to bring to life in the market to grab the consumer's attention. It sounds like he's been reading my columns about WBC beers and Lake Louis. I wrote basically like about a year and a half ago, two and a half years ago, I guess, after Lake Louis after Wisconsin Brewing acquired Lake Louis' brand, or Lake Louis, I guess generally, that like Wisconsin Brewing beer always seemed like it was being pushed.
Yeah.
Like they were selling it, but they not enough people cared about it. And it was the complete opposite for Lake Louis. Like everybody loves Warp Speed and a lot of their other beers too. But they had, at the time that company was purchased by WBC, they had no marketing or no sales team. They were completely relying on distributors to move their product, and which is fine, but I mean that's not a recipe for success. And they had sales and marketing team people previously, so that was a change. So one other thing that is a part of this is their brewery over here in Oconomowoc. They have they are the title sponsor at the baseball stadium of the Lake Country Dockhounds.
Mm-hmm.
They play in Wisconsin Brewing Company Stadium, which is a little bit of an unfortunate thing now that they are deciding to get rid of that brand as a consumer-facing name, but the name of the brewery in there is going to be called Lake Louis Brewing's Dock House, leaning into the kind of the dock hounds. It's a dog that like jumps off a dock.
Sure.
As you might imagine from the name. And they're referring to this as a pilot system, which is pretty interesting. It's a 5-barrel brewery, and that area is going to be open, I guess, in the off season as well. So it'll be like a little destination, brewery tap room.
Mhm.
But I think that's interesting that they're looking at this as a pilot system and not just like we'll be not just a retail outlet. I think that's important.
Right.
And one other nugget from Barry's story that I'll mention with this one is the goal, according to Verdue, is to have contract production account for about 90% of the business.
Wow.
So that is a lot of contract business, and I think that tells you what this company is about. And that was always part of the plan with Wisconsin Brewing. They were gonna, they were always talking really big numbers. I think they're around 50,000 barrels right now.
Yeah.
So lots of opportunity. There's a fair. If you look at some of the contract, some of the there's plenty of beers in Wisconsin and beyond that if you look closely at the label, it says brewed in Verona, Wisconsin, and that's that's obviously that's not Hop House. That's happening at Wisconsin Brewing. So
Right.
yeah, so that's the news of tomorrow. Today.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right, moving on. It's hardware season, Chris, but we're not talking about Menards.
We are not. No,
Yeah.
We're talking about ABF, baby. We got this award. So Wisconsin Brewers took home 4 medals this year. I think feels like that's a little thinner than previous years.
Yeah, than usually. Yeah.
It's up and down. Okay, the highest honor taken by a Wisconsin brewer these were announced, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. Toward the end
last week, yeah.
Toward the end of GABF,
Yep.
out in Denver. And this is, which did I say Great American Beer Festival? Do I have to say? I probably don't have to say that on the back of the beer, right? Everybody knows.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, let's get to it. The gold, we Wisconsin Beer won 1 gold medal, and it is Working Draft Beer of Madison.
Woo! Yay!
One for Kloster Aid, their German-style Doppelbock or Eisbock. It is a Doppelbock.
Yeah.
That style had 47 entries, and Working Drafts was numero uno. Congrats to
nice.
that.
Yeah.
We have 3 other bronze medals. One won by Mobcraft Beer for a repeat champion of the American Sour Ale category. They won bronze for Funk, which was sparse 25 entries this year. Can you believe that? That was surprising to me.
Wow.
Because that's I would think that's the category that is like a kettle sour type deal.
Yeah.
But Low Funk is a beer that's I believe it's won gold twice at GABF. Really nice, really light, gently tart American sour. They're using a little bit of a Solera process where they maintain the it is not a kettle. Wait, did I say it was kettle sour? It is not a kettle sour. That is wild fermented beer, but it's blended with fresh, and then they retain. That's how they propagate the microbes in there, is using a Solera method where they leave a little bit in and then put fresh golden ale on top of it. Really cool, really cool beer, and it's really tasty. Great golf course beer. The Great Dane took home the other another bronze medal for its Oktoberfest in the bronze. That was bronze category, and with a whopping 207 entries on that one. So Great Dane deemed better than 5 other Oktoberfests out there.
Good job, Great Dane.
Very impressive. Congrats to them. And another friend of show, Giant Jones Brewing, I think. They won bronze for their Doppelstike Alt beer.
This one.
That the actual beer? You got
That
it.
is the actual beer.
That is badass. Nice job.
Yeah.
Bronze in the other strong beer category, which had 70 entries. So congrats to Jessica and Eric Ka.
Yep.
Congrats to them. Nice. And one thing I always kind of look at is and it's hard to know year to year like how many, like during the pandemic years, I think I believe they still had the contest, but they didn't have the in 2020 they didn't have the festival, but I believe they still did have the contest.
Yep.
Or the competition. And but entries were way down. It was just tough. Even last year, everybody's still kind of recovering, and it was tough to not everybody was into it. But this year there were 2,154 breweries that entered. That entered beers in the I think it was like 200 some categories. And just to give you kind of an idea of like kind of some of the top line, like the juicy or hazy IPA category was the biggest one. American IPA was the biggest, the most entered category this year. It had 423 entries versus 404 last year. And then juicy or hazy IPA had 375 entries this year versus 427 last year. So maybe there's a little bit of shift there away from the haze. I don't know. It's hard to use that as a proxy for like, like actual beer production or, but maybe. And one thing I want to mention too, last thing about this, so here's why the GABF awards kind of matter, I think. This competition puts small breweries often in front of tens of thousands of beer people across the country who pay attention to this. This is not necessarily a big deal for Joe Schmo, Joe Sixpack, who's just mostly buying beer from the grocery store, is just kind of getting craft beer now and then. But the travel, we pay attention to this and we learn about breweries, especially if they break through in one of the big categories. Like, I remember when Old Irving won, was that just last year or 2 years ago? Old Irving,
very recent.
Chicago won the hazy, I think it was the hazy IPA category, and everybody's like, "Who?" And even people in Chicago were kind of like, "Really? Wow, okay." So, that's what this does. But in a completely different way, there's a Wisconsin beer adjacent business that I had never heard of, and they sponsored the juicy hazy IPA category this year, and that business is called Antigo Xeon. It's like a sign, kind of like a signage, company that makes, I think obviously the name refers to neon, but they do all kinds of. I went and checked them out because I'm like, Antigo, that's got to be Wisconsin. And it turns out it was. They're based in Antigo. They have a shop somewhere else, I think, like California or something. But they make classic, like, your neon sign in a bar or something. But they also make like point of sale displays that light up and stuff. So interesting business that I had no idea existed, and now I do. So there you go.
Very good. All right, moving on. The parade of brewery / taproom openings continues, especially in your neck of the woods, Chris.
Yes. Yeah, man, we got a lot going on here in Milwaukee right now. This weekend or last weekend, another friend of show, Lion's Tail Brewing out in Neenah. We've told you, I think, multiple times about the tap room opening in Wauwatosa, which is like, I live in Wauwatosa, and that tap room is like, I go by it on the way to work every day, and which is really convenient, it turns out. But they it's probably like 10 blocks away from my house, maybe a little bit more. Anyway, point is, they're open.
Yeah.
Till Tosa opened last Friday, and guess what happened? By Sunday, they were out of beer and they had to close. Which is easy to laugh off and be like, "Oh, go Wisconsin."
Yeah.
But I talked to Nick Leak, or I emailed a little bit with Nick Leak, the taproom manager, about it. And this is like super stressful for them. Like, they got so slammed on Friday and Saturday. They had lines out the door.
Wow.
Which rather like it was not a super big deal. They've got a really, really beautiful outdoor covered patio that's heated and everything. That's going to be slinging beers well into the fall, I think. Being a pleasant place to have a beer, but like they had 15 bartenders and it was not enough, and they're looking to hire that many again. And I think what happened here was like, this is just a perfect spot for a tap room, and everybody was super interested in it. They've been seeing it. This location is very high profile. It's right on the main drag in Tosa, or one of the main drags at least. It's certainly the main drag for this neighborhood, and it is a dense neighborhood with a lot of somewhat affluent residents who can now walk down and get a really good beer at this place. So I think that's what's going on there. And we've talked to Alex from Lion's Tail and Eric Hensel and Wenzel.
Yep.
On the show here, and every brewery wants to talk about really good contemporary beer and really good classic styles, and this has become one of the things that to me is something I look for, like, first and foremost in a brewery, because I want to have a hazy IPA. I want to have maybe like some weird kettle sour thing, or like maybe even a pastry stout if it's like a small pour. But I really want to have an ESB. I really want to have a Dunkel that's really that are really well done, and
Pilsner.
Yeah, all that. And that's the stuff that I want, and they have it, and it is good. I went to I checked out the tap room on last Tuesday, and produced the photo, or the story that Greg's showing here. And I had a couple beers, and I've had Juice Cloud and some of their other hazies and stuff, both on tap and in cans and stuff. And I was like, I gotta try some of their kind of classic beers. And I had an ESB and I'm blanking now. The lager. Yeah, it was a Czech dark lager.
Very nice.
They were both really good.
Yeah.
And I will be going to this place a lot. One of the things that's kind of interesting is it's two buildings separated by this kind of open courtyard where they're going to be parking food trucks, or a food truck. It's just so well conceived. And they kind of talked about the two like that kind of bifurcation, I guess, of their beer being represented in the tap room. Like the side with the bar is very cozy and kind of like classic, I guess, tap room experience. And then what's the area that where the brewing area is going to be, it's not ready yet, or it's not being installed yet, is much more modern and kind of sleek, I guess.
Sure.
So that's interesting. But one of the things that I think everybody was stressing out about about not having enough beer was, I mentioned that the brewery is not going in until next year. It's not in there. This is not going to be a brewery until next year.
Right.
Well, at least that was the plan. Maybe, if it keeps up, like, maybe they'll have enough money to pour into it right away, and they'll need the capacity. But they upgraded their capacity in Neenah to accommodate this, but in doing so, they had to stop making beer for a while.
Right.
They have a bunch of collaborations on right now where they basically brewed a beer, with another brewery, at another brewery, and so, like, they have a limit. They can't. It's going to be tough for them to kind of catch up if this keeps going. So, best of luck to them. Tap lines full, and they had, I think it's like 24 tap lines. It is a lot of lines.
That's crazy.
A lot of awesome, lot of great variety. I mean, and that's probably part of it. Like, you could go back, if you went on Friday, you could have 6 different beers or 2 flights or something, and then go back the next day and have 2 more flights and not have the same beer twice. So
That's crazy.
if you're into that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
anyway, talk plenty about Lion's Tail. It's open. It's great. If you come to Tulsa. Okay. Let's keep going to another opening that also friend of show. Last month we had Rob Brennan on from Supermoon. Supermoon is open. They started a soft open last Friday, and I hope I'm not speaking out of school, Rob Brennan, but they're open tomorrow, or no, Friday. They're open. They've been open Friday. They're opening Friday to Sunday, kind of standard, hours, not Sunday night. And their grand opening is going to be next Saturday on the 29th. So, Supermoon Beer Company is open. You can go there on Friday or Sunday during the day. And then speaking of grand openings on Saturday, October 29th, Gathering Place Tosa, a mere 8 to 10 blocks from Lion's Tail Tosa, is having a grand opening on that day as well. That is not this coming Saturday, but next Saturday, the 29th. That is happening directly in my neighborhood. And the other thing that's happening directly in my neighborhood that time is this big, crazy trick or treat where people are everywhere. It happens at night. There's dudes with homebrew wagons carting along, and it is just a huge party for like 10 square blocks. And
wow.
This is Gathering Place is right on the edge of the of this neighborhood in the former Stockhouse Brewing on North Avenue. So they're in for it, man. I hope they knew that that was happening. I'm sure somebody told them. They're big neighbors. So
yeah,
so that's happening. And we have another opening to talk about. This one's not coming for a while though. This is a brewery that I had never heard of, and I discovered that it's happening. And this really hasn't been reported. This is in Two Rivers, which is for those uninitiated. It is just north of Manitowoc on Lake Michigan. And the brewery is called Cool City Brewing. Cool City. This should be my city, because I always every city I go to becomes Cool City. They're planning to open in December. Hopefully, he says. Hopefully, in this former bank building, kind of in the heart of Two Rivers. It'll be the first brewery in town in at least in a long time. There are a couple nearby in Manitowoc. So this is planned as a brew pub for at least the first few years. One of the co-owners, Kurt Andrews, tells me that maybe they'll look at distribution down the road. But for now, they're not having a packaging line. It'll be draft only. And it'll be a full brewery, restaurant, and coffee shop, including a drive-through. I guess that's probably more for the coffee. And a big heated outdoor patio, which you can kind of see on the left side of that photo there.
Yep.
Building is pretty big. It's about 6,000 square feet plus. So seating for about 140 guests, and then another few dozen outside. They'll have 15 or 14 house beers on tap is what the plan is. Says, I kind of asked, what's going to be your focus on beer? He says, we're going to adjust the trends and seasonality. So I'm not sure what that means, but, and they'll probably have a couple, maybe 6 guest taps, including a cider for the gluten averse folks. And then, so the ownership team here is Kurt Andrews and his wife, Jean, and then Barry and Gina Cron. The head brewer, I'm not familiar with this name. His name is Ryan Baer, Baer.
Okay.
Good luck to Cool City Brewing opening hopefully in December in Two Rivers.
Yeah. And then to sort of finish it off, there's a brewery reopening, right, Chris?
Yeah, the brewery.
Which brewery?
The brewery.
Yeah, but which brewery?
The brewery's on First. Yeah. Okay. All right. It was a better idea, maybe, than I don't know.
It's fine.
All right. So the award for the longest temporary pandemic closure goes to Water Street Brewery, downtown Milwaukee. That's right. They have not yet reopened, and they are doing so on October 26th, which I think is like a Tuesday. Is it a Tuesday? It's a week from today. That's Wednesday.
Yeah, it's a Wednesday. Yeah.
Right. They're opening on Y Beer Wednesday. Good for them.
Yeah.
But it'll have a new brewer. It'll have a new identity. It will not be Water Street Brewer anymore. It's just going to be the brewery.
Oh,
which is a bold move in Milwaukee because
right.
there's a lot of breweries. Okay. But the interior is going to be fully remodeled. It's going to be like more open. They've got like a pool hall in there now, kind of like the flagship Great Dane.
Yep.
And a refresh of the food menu. People have been asking about the beer. What about the beer? The beer, I think the beer is going to be remain pretty much the same. The same brewmaster is George Bluvas the third. The third. That's
yes.
Yeah, you got to have that.
The third.
And he's been doing their beer since 1993. So
wow.
Same. I would expect similar results on the beer, on what's in the glass. However you want to think about that.
Sure.
And 1993. That was 6 years after the brewery opened. It was. I think I might have said previously that the Ale House was the first brew pub in Milwaukee, and that is not true. It was Water Street Brewery.
Wow.
So that is that, and this is not exactly that. That is the news, the Badger Beer Hour news for October. But I do want to sneak in one other thing here. This is not exactly a news item, but maybe it's more like a beer PSA thing. The folks at Wisconsin Hop Exchange, and when I say folks, I mean Matt Jansen in particular, put together a fresh hop beer map for that tracks all of the breweries that they sold fresh hops to, that the Wisconsin Hop Exchange, which is the biggest hop selling collective or growers and sellers collective in the state. I think it's the biggest. I'm pretty sure it's the biggest. So every beer that they sold, every brewery that they sold fresh hops to this year, or hops with intent to brew a fresh hop beer, they plotted this on this little map, and then and it's really nice. It looks really cool. And then they're so you can go check it out, and it's got like when it was tapped and how long, so you can figure out how fresh it is, I guess. And Greg, can you put that URL out there? I'm also, it's going to be on my Twitter, so you can, and I'll pin it to my Twitter profile so you can find it nice and easy. But if you go to the Wisconsin Hop Exchange, it's wisconsinhopexchange.com. You probably will be able to find it, I think. Anyway, that's a really cool thing. Fresh hop beers are cool. It's pretty late in the season right now, so some of them might be out, but fresh hop beers are cool, and if you haven't had one, you should go get one. That's the news.
Landon, what's going on?
We've got some
working on
events.
that. Yeah, Badger Beer happy hours or something.
2 hours. Badger Beer 2 hours.
Here's that link, y'all, that Chris was talking about. WisconsinHopExchange.com. Before we quickly roll through the events here. So what's going on, man? I see we got some events here.
We've got Ice Cold Beer Festival in Minocqua. That's coming up. That's
our favorite town.
That's this weekend. It's $40, and if you want to buy VIP, if it's still available, it's $65. It's 1 to 4 p.m. So only 3 hours for that. They're calling it a premier tasting event. I don't know what makes it premier exactly, but it does have craft beer, food, and live music. The best thing about this is all proceeds go to causes and nonprofits, including, but not limited to, hospice patients and patients at the Marshfield Breast Cancer Center. So it is the perfect time for that because October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we'll go out and support that if you're in or near Minocqua this weekend.
Yes, drinking beer for a great cause never gets old.
That's right. And then in my part of the state, or at least somewhat near my part of the state, they're having Dark Beer Fest at Hop and Barrel in Hudson.
Right, right.
Doesn't cost to get in. So, but it is this weekend, Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. And I imagine it'll probably go a little later than 6, but you can sample 6 dark beers plus some new ones, enjoy live music, and the best thing,
right.
taco truck. Tacos, man.
Beers, tacos. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Can't go wrong with that.
Did it snow up there this week? It snowed down here.
It did. Yeah, it snowed up here too, but it's gone now. Thank goodness.
Well, watch that there. It could continuous, but you already know if you live.
It's supposed to be like 70 some degrees this weekend, I think.
Oh,
it's the perfect weekend to go out.
For some beers and some tacos. Absolutely.
That's right. And then if you're into masochism and hurting yourself, the Wisconsin Beer Run at Old World, Wisconsin. So the 5K, which I don't think I can do a 5K. But they do have a 0.05K, which is more my style.
Here we go.
Yeah,
right.
that is in Eagle, Wisconsin. It's Sunday this weekend. It's on Sunday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I think it's $65 to run the 5K, $55 to run the 0.05K. So you don't get as much for your money if you run the 0.05K, but you won't die probably.
No, and I'm sure those funds go to the Old World, Wisconsin.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure the money is used for really good stuff. But free beer after the run. Then you get to enjoy Old World, Wisconsin's beer, the new brew house, live music, food, and more. So really good stuff.
Sounds really good. Yeah, and these are the last events, y'all. So
we're starting to run thin as we start to get cold. Yeah.
Right. So everything's gonna have to move indoors, and if you're still not silly about being indoors, these are the last ones, y'all. You're gonna have to get in there.
That's
Slide
right.
in there.
And then a couple more Lincoln Warehouse Brewery crawl. This is happening on Friday, November the 4th at 6:00. It's happening at the Lincoln Warehouse for Milwaukee Girls Pint Out. It is their last event ever. So help them end the era with a bang as they hop around amazing breweries in the Lincoln Warehouse. This event is co-ed, and most of the breweries are dog-friendly if you like to bring your pooch out to breweries. Yeah.
And quick plug, so we don't have to do it later. On Badger Beer Happy Hour, which happens next Wednesday on Twitter at 8 p.m., we're going to talk to the Wisconsin beer maven, Maggie Schinker. She's going to tell us all about that. So if you want more details, you can tune into Badger Beer Happy Hour next week. We'll go fully in depth on that if y'all want the details, and y'all can interact with her and come up to the stage and ask her any questions about it. So Maggie will be awesome. She'll be there, and you can get the full details next week if y'all want them. So cool. It's not cool that they're going out. It's not cool that they're not going to be anymore, but Maggie will be able to explain all that, so we can delve into that next week. So
absolutely.
Sounds like a fun event though. And again, one of those last ones here, we're going to try to sneak in before Mother Nature says no.
That's right. And then the last event before our next Badger Beer Hour, Tiranina is having their 23rd anniversary celebration. That is in Lake Mills.
23rd.
Yeah, 23rd. And so this is happening Saturday, November 12th from 5 to 10 p.m. It is $70. Now, that sounds like a lot of money for an event, but included with this, you get a commemorative glass, a pour of their anniversary beer, plus...
Which I'm sure is a big beer, too.
I'm sure it's a huge beer,
Yeah.
Plus, you get a 4-pack of their anniversary beer.
Oh.
And then you get 3 samples of their cellared favorites, and then a beer cupcake, and then food while it lasts. So
and it's probably like finger food or but it's probably enough to stick to your gut, especially with those big ass beers they're gonna have.
But I'm sure they'll have some other stuff around too.
Yeah, but 23rd though.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that long for them, and they have just been, they were clearly around before you and I were craft beer drinkers, or close, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, 23, man, hats off to that. So
it's awesome.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So
That's it for events.
all right. So I got to do my job here, and I'm woefully not ready. I don't know why. Why wouldn't I be ready? We've been here for 2 hours. What the hell's going on, Greg? I've already plugged Badger Beer Happy Hour, and we've been here for 2 hours with wonderful content, breaking news. We got 1 and 4 down there.
I just want to shout out this beer. Or
Okay.
these beers, I should say. We talked about this last month, but the 1 and 4, it's a collaboration beer that Third Space spearheaded, and it's out now. Over at Ray's, my local bottle shop, I saw the Third Space one. There's an Amorphic one. I think there's a Gathering Place. There's at least like 3 or 4 of them, out on the shelf, supporting domestic violence prevention and survivors. So that's a great cause, and you should check it out. I don't really plug specific beers all that often, but that's a really great cause, and the beer tastes really good too.
Show it again quick, Chris.
1 in 4.
1 in 4. All right. Landon, what's going on with the Taproom Travelers?
I've got one shameless plug. It's going on this weekend. There is a kind of a collaboration walk. So the salon that my wife and I own, and then Lazy Monk, and then the masseuse that is also in the salon, they're doing a cancer walk this Saturday. So it starts at Lazy Monk, kind of goes around a couple miles, and they come back to Lazy Monk to enjoy beer. And then, and then it's not just for breast cancer, but you can walk for whoever in your life was affected by or is affected by cancer. So just kind of a little walk. And
where do we find the details to that, buddy?
You can go to the Grazie Salon Facebook page. You can probably go to the Lazy Monk website and or Facebook page to find out all about that. I don't believe there's any registration fee, but if you want to RSVP for it, you can do that. And then, of course, they're welcoming donations. And I think the donations go locally to people that are battling cancer.
Great cause. Another great cause.
Yeah.
Y'all are hitting the causes this month, and that's just a great thing. And yeah, one more shameless plug for Badger Beer Happy Hour next week, y'all. 8 p.m. Eastern. I think we're gonna have 8 p.m. Central, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna have Chris Josman back, who missed last month. And he's gonna be joined by Maggie Skinner, who joined us for the first time last month. And we always have Simon McConico from Venture Brewing Company and Milwaukee. And we have my dumbass to moderate it all. It's wonderful. So, any last thing before we get out of here, y'all?
I've got one last quick thing. Just a little nugget. If you listen this long, obviously you like hearing me talk. I will be talking on another channel about beer tomorrow, and probably some other things. Tomorrow, I will be on Kristen Bry's radio show. It's called As Goes Wisconsin. It's heard statewide on the. I'm gonna blow the name of the. It's like a statewide network of radio stations, anchored in the Madison or the Milwaukee market by WAUK 540 AM. I will be on at I think it's 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Nice.
So tune into As Goes Wisconsin tomorrow and hear Kristen and I talk about beer.
And as y'all can tell, one of the things we all have in common is we don't like to plug our own events. We like to have events. We like to do them. We like to be in public. But when we talk about ourselves, it gets a little problematic. So that's why we love to bring y'all the Badger Beer Hour, because we can talk about everything else. So you see what happens when we talk about ourselves, it breaks down. We don't have it. No one has links for anything. No one remembers where they're going to be. No one remembers time. Landon's like, it's not even on my Taproom Travelers website. It's on my wife's website. Right.
Yep.
So like that's just who we are at the end of the day, y'all. We are humble fellas who love beer and who love to bring y'all the beer news from Wisconsin, because it fascinates all of us and it keeps us motivated to do this every month. We want to thank y'all for coming down this journey with us and being we get hundreds and hundreds of people that go on Chris's Twitter, the same pretty much season on mine, and we just want to thank y'all. It's next month is Thanksgiving, so we'll thank you again but I don't think we thank y'all enough for keeping us going and keeping us motivated to do this. So on that note, y'all, we're going to get out of here. It was awesome to see you. Chris, I'll talk to you next week. Landon, good luck with your walk this week.
Thanks,
hopefully,
man.
y'all, again, go to Lazy Monk for that. And again, what's the wife's page called?
Grazie.
All right. So if you're up in Eau Claire, which I always struggle to say,
Eau Claire.
in the Eau Claire area, please try to find maybe some time to do that, because that's a great cause. So, and catch Chris somewhere tomorrow on some Wisconsin thing. It'll be on his Twitter. So
yeah,
if y'all go on his Twitter, y'all be able to find it. But I wanted to say thank you again, and we'll see y'all next month.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye, y'all.